This is the second video lecture on thalamus, and in this lecture I will tell you about the connections of thalamus and some of the important functions of the thalamus. Now the thalamus is a big mass of the gray matter which is the important relay station for almost all the sensations. Okay, so therefore it has many subdivision of the nuclei and there are many afferent and efferent connection. So please sit with the pencil and paper with you and be careful in attending this lecture. Moving to the next slide, and that's just to recapitulate the thalamus, which I have already covered into the last video lecture. The thalamus is a large egg-shaped mass which is shown here. See this, right and left thalami are shown here, and as I said in last video also, this is a theoretical diagram, okay, which shows the shape and size of the thalamus. Okay, it is about 4 centimeter long and placed obliquely means its anterior end of the thalamus, they are close to each other as compared to their posterior ends which are away from each other. Now, as I said that this is the large mass of the gray matter and it is the sensory nucleus which is the relay station, the principal relay station for the various sensory impulses. Now let us come to the afferent and efferent connection of the thalamus for spatial sense. I will deal here with the first with the afferent connection, means fibers coming to the particular nucleus or nuclei of the thalamus. There the relay will take place, and then the the efferent fibers will go to relay to some other part of the central nervous system. Okay, so let us come to the, the afferent and efferent connection of thalamus for spatial senses. Okay, we will first deal with the relay of the spatial sense in the thalamus. And which are the spatial senses? The vision, the hearing, then the olfaction and the taste impulses. So the four important sensation of the spatial sense, they are relaying into the thalamus. Let us come to the first sense, that is the visual. Visual impulses. These visual impulses are brought to the lateral geniculate body. And lateral geniculate body is on the posterolateral aspect of the thalamus, on the side of the pulvinar, that is the overhanging area of the posterior end of the thalamus, and this is brought from the retina to ultimately to the lateral geniculate body. Thus the lateral geniculate body is the part of the thalamus, and after relaying here into the lateral geniculate body, the efferent fibers, they go through the optic tract to that of the, optic radiation, not the optic tract but optic radiation into the, the visual cortex, area number 7, 17, area number 17. From area 17, this will go to the association area adjacent to the area 17, that is area 18 and the area 19. So this is how the relay of these visual impulses takes place into the lateral geniculate body, that is the part of the thalamus. Then auditory impulses, that is sensation of hearing, and this is brought to the medial geniculate body, through the lateral lemniscus. I will show you in the next diagram the lateral lemniscus and how it will relay into the medial geniculate body, and after relaying in medial geniculate body, it will finally relay in the auditory area of the cerebral cortex, which is located on the superior temporal gyrus, on the superior, in the temporal lobe of the superior temporal gyrus. So the relay is taking place in thalamus, and which part of thalamus? The medial geniculate body, and this is an spatial sense. Just please keep on noting it. Then olfactory impulses, this is the only sense okay, which is not directly relaying into thalamus. Otherwise, all the sensory impulses they relay in the thalamus, okay. Now this is brought to the thalamus not directly but indirectly through the amygdaloid complex, okay, through the amygdaloid complex. Let us come to the fourth sense, that is the taste impulses, sensation of taste, which comes from the tongue, palate, okay. And these are brought through the solitary tract. Solitary that means from solitary nucleus, okay, the taste fiber comes to the solitary nucleus, okay, and from solitary nucleus then this tract goes to say thalamus with the help of solitary thalamic tract, okay, and where it relays to the ventral postromedial nucleus. I will show you the ventral postromedial nucleus, and from ventral postromedial nucleus of the thalamus, these fibers, the efferent fibers, then they ultimately go to the postcentral gyrus, area number 3, 1 and 2, okay, post-central gyrus, the sensory cortex, okay, to the sensory cortex. So we know about the afferent and the efferent fibers for this taste sensation. Now I will show you this, some of these fibers, okay. Now in this diagram you can see that this is the visual. Let us see for the visual sensation, which will come to the lateral geniculate body by the optic tract, okay, from retina through the optic chiasma to optic tract. It will relay in this place where I am moving my cursor. LGB means lateral geniculate body. Here it will relay in thalamus, because LGB is the part of the thalamus, and then these fibers, they are going, these are the efferent fibers, they are going and will relay into the visual cortex, the area number 17 of the occipital lobe. Similarly, the fibers, the medial geniculate body is the part of the thalamus, which is a relay station for the sensation of hearing. And this fibers from sensation of hearings, they are coming through the lateral lemniscus. They are brought from internal ear, ultimately to the lateral lemniscus, which will relay into the medial geniculate body, and then the efferent fibers, they are going to relay in the cerebral cortex into the superior temporal gyrus at this place. In the superior temporal gyrus, where is the higher center of the hearing is located, okay. So this is the afferent and efferent of the olfactory, okay, or the sorry, not olfactory, this is the of the taste, okay, it is of the sorry, it's not, it is of the hearing, okay, I'm sorry, I was thinking something else. It is for the hearing sensation on the superior temporal gyrus, okay, superior. Thus the sense of the taste after coming from the solitary tract, which is not shown in this diagram, will relay into the post ventro-postromedial nucleus. Ventral postro, that I will show you in the next diagram. Ventral postromedial nucleus of the thalamus, and then from there this will go to the post-central gyrus. It will go from here to the post-central gyrus, area number 3, 1 and 2. They were situated behind the central sulcus, okay, behind the central sulcus. So these are the four different sensations which are, I mean say, in relation to that of the spatial sense. Let's go to the next, and here we will see the afferent and efferent connection of the other sensation, okay, which are coming to. Let us come in the category of extraceptive impulses, sensory impulses which are coming from the external surface of the body, that is skin. And which are these sensations? They are the sensation of the pain, touch and temperature sensation. And from the skin, this pain, touch and temperature sensation are brought through the two spatial tract. They are spinothalamic, okay, and the trigeminothalamic tract. The spinothalamic tract brings the pain, touch and temperature, okay, from the whole of the body below the neck, while the trigeminothalamic tract brings the pain, touch and temperature from the head and neck region, okay, and they ultimately come and terminate into the ventropostromedial and ventropostrolateral, ventropostromedial and ventropostrolateral nuclei. Let us see where they are situated. Now, just a brief review of this section, horizontal section showing the various subdivision of nucleus. This is the anterior nucleus and I will tell you about it. Then this is the medial part or medial part of nucleus, which has the midline nucleus and medial dorsal nucleus, and this is the lateral part which has many nuclei, okay, and in the lateral parts broadly we have divided into dorsal and ventral. This is the ventral, three ventral anterior, ventral lateral and ventral posterior, and this is lateral dorsal and lateral posterior and pulvinar. They are the part of the dorsal nuclei, and in pulvinar this is the median and lateral geniculate body, about which we have already learned. Now he is saying that the extraceptive impulses brought through the spinothalamic and trigeminothalamic, they ultimately relay in ventroposterior nucleus. Ventroposterior nucleus, which is further subdivided into ventropostromedial and ventropostrolateral, which I will show you in this diagram, and I am just removing this. See this. This is the ventropostrolateral. This is ventroposterior, which is divided in ventropostrolateral and ventropostromedial. If you cut a section through this ventroposterior, then this will be the ventropostrolateral. So in this extraceptive sensation they come, which is very important nucleus of thalamus, ventroposterior nucleus, ventropostrolateral and ventropostromedial. Okay, of the whole body, pain, touch and temperature, they will come to this nucleus. Let us come to the second category of the sensory impulses, which are called as the proprioceptive impulses. And these proprioceptive impulses, they come, I mean say they bring the sensation from the muscle, joints, tendon, okay, and capsule of the joint, ligaments of the joint, tendon, muscles, all the sensation from these structures, musculoskeletal system, okay, they are brought to this, and they are classified as proprioceptive impulses, and they are brought to thalamus through the medial lemniscus and trigeminothalamic tract, okay. So the medial lemniscus and trigeminothalamic tract, they bring, the upper one was spinothalamic, this is the medial lemniscus. I will tell you about the medial lemniscus. Is that lemniscus which brings the proprioceptive fibers, and this tract is formed by the fasciculus gracilis and cuneatus, which bring the conscious proprioceptive sensation. And these two tracts, then they will end into the ventropostrolateral. See this again, the same ventroposterior. So ventropostrolateral, where cursor is moving, see this nucleus, which is a cross section, that means coronal section passing from this site, okay, where I am moving. So this will end into the ventropostrolateral nucleus, and from here, after relaying, the fibers will end into the postcentral gyrus, okay, area 3, 1 and 2, because this sensation of proprioceptive sensation, they are going to our level of consciousness. You feel the stretch, okay, tension in your muscle, you feel the pain from the muscle, you feel the pain from the joint stretching, hyperextension or hyperflexion of a joint is felt through this sensation. Let us come to the third category of the fibers which are carrying the information from viscera. Though viscera is not somatic, it should not reach to our level of consciousness because it is part of the autonomic nervous system, not the somatic. So this is the visceral information are also passing, okay, and this information is brought to the anterior thalamus. Okay, till now we were learning about this I mean say ventral and dorsal thalamus, that means from the lateral part of the thalamus. Now this is the anterior nucleus of thalamus or anterior part of this nucleus, and this is concerned with the autonomic nervous system, that is the sensation will come from the viscera here to this anterior, and this is brought to the anterior thalamic nucleus or anterior thalamic part, and through who is bringing this sensation? The hypothalamus part, that means the mammillary bodies of the hypothalamic part, they are bringing this sensation from the viscera, and also it is brought through the reticular formation, and after relaying into the anterior part of the thalamus, then the fibers will go back to the same mammillary body, that means in hypothalamus, and to the gyrus cinguli, and this will go to the gyrus cinguli, which is located above the corpus callosum. Okay, now coming to the fourth category of the sensation, I mean say in addition to this above, that is visceral, proprioceptive and extraceptive. Okay, to visceral you can also call it as interoceptive, extraceptive, proprioceptive and anteroceptive sensation. Now in addition to these three different sensation, the thalamus is also receiving offerings from all parts of the cerebrum. So cerebrum is sending information to the thalamus, and from cerebellum also it is coming, and also coming from corpus striatum, that is caudate nucleus, lentiform nucleus. Okay, so let us go to some of the, so we have covered few of the nuclei, anterior, then posterior, I means ventral with geniculate body, and some of the nuclei are still remaining here, what they are doing. So let us see about these nuclei. Okay, now afferent and efferent connection of thalamus from the medial part of the thalamus. So this we have not talked about the medial, dorsal and the midline nucleus here, which is the medial part of the thalamus. Now this part receives the fibers from amygdaloid body, okay, the pyriform cortex and corpus striatum, and they receive the fibers from corpus striatum. After relaying in this medial nucleus or medial part of this thalamic nucleus, efferent go to the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex means in front of the area number 6. Okay, they will go to the frontal lobe, okay, in the prefrontal cortex. Okay, then it will go to the insula, which is a hidden part, okay, between the parietal and the temporal lobe. Then this I mean say after these fibers which come and relay in this part of the cerebral cortex, they are concerned with the personality of a person, his mood, feelings of an individual. So means what a in total what is the personality of a person is determined by the prefrontal cortex, okay, of the frontal lobe, prefrontal cortex. So this is governed by, that means for that the fibers they relay into the medial part of the thalamus. Okay, so we have covered anterior part, we have covered the medial part, and some of the nuclei including this medial and lateral geniculate body we have covered, and ventro-posterior part we have covered in now let us come to the remaining part of this lateral dorsal nucleus. See, this was the dorsal part of the nucleus, lateral dorsal, lateral posterior and pulvinar, they come under the dorsal group. Okay, so first let us see this nucleus, lateral dorsal nucleus. LDN means lateral dorsal nucleus, and lateral dorsal nucleus, this receives the fibers from hippocampal formation, okay, from pretectum and also from superior colliculus. Superior colliculus, pretectum, hippocampal formation, and after relaying in this LD nucleus or lateral dorsal nucleus here, they send the efferent fibers to cingulate gyrus, okay, parahippocampal gyrus, parietal lobe, okay, and thus it forms the part of the limbic system. So the main function of this lateral dorsal nucleus, that it is involved, it is a relay station for the limbic system, and other function of this is that it is involved in the interpretation of the visual stimuli, because it is getting the fibers from superior colliculus, so for the interpretation. So this nucleus is function of this LD nucleus is over. Let us come to the LP nucleus, okay. Lateral posterior nucleus, okay, and this is, and along with the pulvinar. So I will just give you the connection of the lateral posterior and pulvinar nucleus together, okay, pulvinar nucleus together, because they have almost the same function, okay. So I'm not going to expand it, okay, going to expand it. Superior colliculus, it is getting the fibers, afferent fibers from superior colliculus and retina. That means it is concerned with visual sensation. And these fibers, after they are relaying, they go to the superior parietal lobule. They go to the parieto-temporal lobule, and say part of the cerebral cortex, to the prefrontal cortex, orbitofrontal cortex, and visual areas 17, 18, and 19. So it is reflecting onto a large part of the cerebral hemisphere. See, parietal lobule, parieto-temporal, prefrontal or orbitofrontal, visual area 17, 18, and 19. And its function is that since it is receiving the fibers from superior colliculus and retina, both LP nucleus and pulvinar, it is the function is to interpretation of the visual and sensory stimuli, okay. The visual, they interpret, okay, about the visual impulses. Then coming to this nucleus, ventro anterior nucleus, this nucleus here, see in this diagram, it is located here, see this ventro anterior, and this is the ventrolateral nucleus, part of the ventral nuclei. So ventro anterior and ventrolateral, I have just enclosed both these nuclei together. This, they receive fibers from globus pallidus, okay, a part of lentiform nucleus, globus pallidus, cerebellar nuclei, those dentate, fastigious, embalmiformis, all these cerebellar nuclei. Then vestibular nuclei coming from the vestibular nucleus, which is at the junction of the pons and the medulla, large nucleus, okay. And then substantia nigra, okay, in the midbrain, substantia nigra, and then they reflect, I mean send its fibers after relaying into this ventral anterior and ventral lateral nuclei. The fibers, they go to the frontal lobe, they go to the premotor and motor areas, area number 4, and they are involved in the planning of motor function. So these two nuclei, they are involved in the motor activity, that is ventral antral, ventral anterior and ventral lateral nuclei, and they are ultimately concerned with the planning of the motor function, because before the motor activity takes place, it is I mean to say moderated, as well as it is programmed what kind of motor activity will take place. That takes place usually in the prefrontal area, okay, or the frontal lobe, okay. So these nuclei are involved in the planning of the motor function. Now let us, this completes the connections of the thalamus, and I have told you the connection from each and every nuclei subdivision of the thalamus, okay. Now let us come briefly about the function of thalamus. So by this time you must have realized that thalamus is a relay station, okay. It is a major primary relay nuclei, okay. Thalamus, its function is just to relay, okay, and all sensory impulse except the smell, which was indirectly coming, otherwise 100% sensory impulses, they come to the various nuclei of the thalamus, okay. And that's why there were so many subdivision of nuclei were there. From here, that means from these nuclei of thalamus, these sensory impulses, they go to the different specific cerebral cortical areas through the thalamocortical radiation. Okay? So all these fibers which are going from thalamus to the various areas of the cerebral cortex, may it be in frontal lobe, parietal, temporal or occipital, all these fibers going towards the cerebral cortex, they are grouped into thalamocortical fibers, and since they radiate, it is called as the thalamocortical radiation. Now ultimately the cerebral cortex is responsible for interpretation of various kinds of sensory stimuli. That means what kind of sensation is coming is ultimately realized only at the level of cerebral cortex. Okay, the thalamus is just the relay station. Okay, however, in case of the destruction of cerebral cortex, if the cerebral cortex is destroyed in an animal, okay, the thalamus can appreciate the sense of only two sense. It will appreciate the crude pain and the temperature. Otherwise, okay, the animal where the whole thing is gone, cerebral cortex is gone, will not be able to sense any of the sensation, okay, except the crude pain and the temperature, right? Just thus the thalamus is a perceiver of the crude pain and temperature, and to some extent it is acting as the cerebral cortex where the final sense is realized. Okay, sensations are realized. Second function of the thalamus is to serve as integrative center for motor function. We have just seen that. Okay, the fibers which are going to the prefrontal area or frontal lobes, they are planning the motor activity. Okay, so this integration and planning also takes place. Okay, otherwise the main planning takes place in the frontal lobe, but here it is the integration of whatsoever motor activity or impulses are coming for motor activity. Say it may be cerebellum, may it be from the lower extrapyramidal parts of the nervous system. This is ultimately I mean to say relayed into the frontal lobe, okay, for the planning. Now through the ascending reticular activating system, ARAS, ascending reticular activating system, the intralaminar nuclei of thalamus, okay. And what was intralaminar nucleus? Centromedian, which was in the lamina of the white matter. Okay, intralaminar nuclei of thalamus, they regulate the state of consciousness, alertness and attention, how attentive you are and how alert you are. Okay, what is your level of consciousness, whether you are half sleeping or fully awake, that all depends on this intralaminar nuclei, okay, present in the thalamus. And this is the last slide where the clinical aspect is discussed, and this is in relation to the thalamic syndrome. Okay, and thalamic syndrome occurs due to vascular lesion of the artery supplying to the thalamus, that is thalamo-geniculate branch of the posterior cerebral artery. So the thalamo-geniculate branch of the posterior cerebral artery, if it is blocked or ruptured, this will lead to the interference in the blood supply to the thalamus, and thalamic syndrome will result. And in this condition, the emotional instability is seen in the patient. Okay, he may spontaneously laugh or start crying all of a sudden. Okay, and there is a disturbances of sensation also, that is hypersensitivity. Okay, he may feel the more pain or more temperature, or without any I mean to say reason, he may say that I'm feeling lot of heat and lot of cold. Okay, this kind of the hypersensitivity of a particular sensation can be reported by the patient of thalamic syndrome. A spontaneous pain on opposite side of the body may also be noticed. Okay, he may complain that all of a sudden I have started getting the pain in the opposite half of the body. Opposite half of the body means opposite to the site where the artery is occluded, okay, or the lesion on the artery has taken place. Now the thalamic syndrome may be associated with hemiparesis if the lesion also involve the internal capsule. Okay, because very close to the in the lateral surface of the this thalamus is in contact with that of the internal capsule, which is carrying the fibers, motor and sensory fibers, so that if the internal capsule is also involved because of this occlusion or because of the involvement of this artery, then a person may feel the, I mean to say, weakness of the muscles, okay, on that side. Okay, hemi means on the that half of the opposite half of the body will be feeling that. This completes the connections, means afferent and efferent of the thalamus, okay, and function and clinical aspect. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video.